Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's me, Defiant Spur, and if I have to re-record this another time, I'm going to scream and go out and bash my head on a wall. Anyway, so things which have been happening recently in game, which I haven't commented on. We've had bots in Tier 1 to Tier 3 matches, which is a good thing. Anything to make the game a bit friendlier at those lower tiers for new players is good. And also it pads up the numbers a bit, which I think is also good. Wargaming handled it atrociously. They didn't announce it beforehand, so the internet was on fire with the scandal of people suddenly discovering bots driving around in game. Last week we had the test of the limited tier spread in multiplayer battle, so +1 -1 instead of +2 -2. General reaction on the internet was that it was good. They're all wrong, and I think anybody who supports +1 -1 tier spread is also wrong, and I'm going to explain why in a generally incoherent ramble. So yeah, sit back and enjoy. Oh yeah, this is all footage taken during the +1 -1 test. As you can see, one of my first issues with +1 -1 is it doesn't make teams good all of a sudden. I'm actually very good in this tank, regularly cracking up 1500, 2k damage games. It's a beast of a tank. And if it didn't see tier 7s, then it would be OP. I mean, I already think it is OP, but it would be even more OP. But as you can see, in a +1 tier game, tier 5 and a tier 6, I'm not doing particularly well. Everybody has bad games, and that's something the +1 -1 experiment won't fix. Everybody's going to have bad games. You are still going to have rubbish teams. You're still going to have matches where your team gets wiped out in 2 minutes. In fact, I'm going to say the average length of the game during the test for me was probably about 2 minutes, maybe 2.5 minutes. Most matches were a complete wipeout of one side, and they were atrocious. They really were atrocious games. I did around about 50 games, I think, overall, and in the end I just turned off the Xbox and went and played something else. It was just not fun. Even in platoons. In fact, in platoons it was worse. So yeah, anyway, it's not going to make the game better. It's not a magic panacea. Matchmaking is still very, very, very much broken and very, very special, and restricting the tiers of tanks isn't going to change that. There are tanks which are massively overpowered for a limited tier spread. If we use the popular example of the Absolution, at the moment it's technically balanced, probably because idiots play it, people worse than me. Yeah, I'm not great, but I can at least get it to perform. And because it sees tier 8 tanks, which, tier 7, tier 8, you get a lot of high pen tanks which can slice through its spaced armour and kill it. But restricting it to +1 tier, sure, it's still going to see a few dangerous tank destroyers at tier 7, but it means it's still going to be seeing a lot more tier 6 tanks. A lot more tier 6 tanks, and at its own tier it's really dangerous. Of course, you've got the defense of just aim. It's got weak spots, you aim for those, you can kill it. Well, yeah, but by that logic the M3 Lee should be in battles against the Tiger, because historically it was. It didn't do particularly well, but on paper the M3 Lee can kill a Tiger tank. It just has to aim. So yeah, so next time somebody wheels out that argument about the Absolution, just point that out to them. Which interestingly ties into another reason I don't like the +1 -1 spread, in that it removes another layer of historical relevance from the game. You will no longer have any of those really dramatic battles between Shermans and Tiger tanks. You're not going to be going out in like your Sherman tank or something, or your Crusader, and then all of a sudden go, oh my god, there's a Tiger tank, ah! ah, this is just like the Battle of blah blah blah. This is just like the North African campaign. That's not going to happen. You are never going to you're never going to get that historical accuracy in a +1 -1 game. I mean, admittedly, by my own logic, that is a flaw I have with the tier system anyway, in that tanks that should face each other aren't facing each other. I think if I designed world tanks, it'd probably be very, very brutal and have like maybe 2 players. Because I would have the M3 Lee facing up against Tiger tanks. And what a funny match that would be, especially for the Tiger tank that gets ambushed by a group of M3 Lees as they tear it apart. Where was I? I was ranting. Blah blah blah. Tier spread. Game balance. Yeah. As I said, tanks generally in game are balanced for all of the tiers they encounter. Now some people will say it shouldn't matter if a tank is restricted to tier 6 because it's already been balanced for that tier, and that's a rubbish argument. I mean, that is total and utter sweaty goat bollocks. It really is. Because you can't look at tanks like the Long Bomb, the Absolution, things like the KV-1 and stuff like that, and go, oh, those tanks are perfectly balanced for just facing off against their own tier the majority of the time. They don't need to face bigger tier tanks, do they? No, of course not. The KV-2, yeah, he should be facing same tier and weaker tier tanks, predominantly more than higher tier tanks. That makes perfect sense. They're perfectly balanced for those tiers. Yeah, sometimes you need to have games against, where you are the little fish, to make up for the fact that in other games you are so much better. Now, it's not a particularly good way of running a game, I don't think, but it's how it is. I mean, I personally would rather have a much more fluid tier spread system. I think there are tanks which should be allowed to go to +3, potentially even +4 tiers. Light tanks especially. I never played a light tank before the light tank changes. Went, God, I wish this tank didn't have +3. Because instead what would happen is that I'd have a game in my light tank and I'd be top tier and I'd be laughing. Hell, one of my favourite games I had in a light tank was in my MT25 when I was bottom tier under the old +3 spread, and that was fun. Yeah, I was dinging shots off of the top tier tanks, but they couldn't touch me because I was a light tank. Managed to take out a Tiger 2. That was great fun. I aimed. Got behind it, it couldn't hit me. I Circle of Death it. It was great. And there are other tanks which can do stuff like that. Equally, there are tanks which don't perform quite so well when they are bottom tier. So maybe they could see less tiers, who knows. But the +1 -1 as an overall scheme, it's not a magic panacea. It's not going to fix the game. Matchmaking is still broken. Teams are not balanced. I don't even think it's balancing packages anymore of different teams against each other. So I know full well I've had games where all of the top tier tanks on my team have been stock versus top packages on the other team. And yeah, that makes a huge difference. There are some tanks which are terrible stock, and maybe stock tanks shouldn't see like +2 tier. Yeah, that could be worth looking at. Another issue I have with the experiment, it was only a week long, and given how the play style and player base works in this game, that is not long enough to accumulate any significant data which isn't impacted by the novelty factor. Generally, I find, and a lot of the people I platoon with and play with online will agree with me, that the first week after a major update, the game's a nightmare. It's like IQs drop sharply. People are just experimenting, trying to learn how the game works again with the new update. People will only be playing like 2 tanks over and over again, especially if there's a new premium tank out. And the week-long experiment was just like that. Most teams are pushing incredibly recklessly because they weren't seeing +2 tier tanks anymore, so they could just Zerg rush across the map, pew-pewing left, right and centre, which of course doesn't work, and that's probably why there were so many incredibly bad games. Oh, like this one here was probably one of the better games I saw because it wasn't a total wipeout. And you know, I was playing like a moron. Oh, I'm dying. It's the consumption. Yeah. Yeah, people will also have to get used to the fact they'll be getting less XP and less silver per battle. And of course, I don't think the majority of the player base realise that, because let's be honest, not many players are aware of how the XP system and silver reward system works. Which is why every day on Twitter or Facebook you see people going, "Why did this tank get more XP than me when it caused less damage? I killed 7 tanks in my tier 10 tank and it was in a tier 8 tank and yet it got more XP than me. That's not fair." You know, completely overlooking the fact that their tier 10 tank was going around crushing tier 8 tanks, while the tier 8 tank that got more XP was ninja killing stupid dumbass tier 10s. Yeah, it's... Anyway, I think I pretty much made my point. It was a stupid system. It's not going to fix any of the problems. In fact, if they brought it in permanently without having a massive change of all of the tanks in game, it's just going to make the problems worse. It really is. One thing I noticed was that there were maybe 9 to 10 tanks I saw played in every battle I was in. You know, there was a lot of Jacksons, a lot of premium tanks, a lot of Absolutions, a lot of Rampanzers. Tier 10 matches still sucked. You know, tier 10 has its own special problems, which are never going to get fixed. So yeah. Anyway, I've actually got some review videos lined up to come out this week, and less rambly, so you don't have to put up with this never-ending drone of me waffling away. Anyway, cheers for putting up with this, and I'll see you all later. Bye.